Hello, my little darklings. Tonight, you're in for a treat. It is the first concerted effort of two programs, the Paranormal 60 and the Paranormal 360, coming together, merging for one great night of entertainment and information. Not because you asked for it, not because you demanded it, but because you deserve it. The very best in paranormal talk radio begins in just moments, right here on the Paranormal 60.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney. He won't float. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
All right, my darklings, thank you for being here and spending a little time with me this evening. I did promise you that tonight would be a news episode. However, there was a wrong that I felt need to be righted. So I stepped into my quantum leap accelerator and I vanished. I woke to find myself facing a mirror image that was sadly still my own, but I knew that something needed to be done. You see, a couple weeks ago on the Paranormal 360 over on WCCO radio, I had an episode that aired, and unfortunately, because of a rainout the day before for the Minnesota Twins, they had to play a doubleheader on Sunday, which then impeded on the program that was actually aired. Just a very short segment of the entire episode aired. Now, this was one that I had pre-recorded because I was going to be out of town, and I've got the recording like I would normally present the Paranormal 60 on YouTube. You just will not see my guest. She requested that her face not be shown. But this topic, this story, and what she had to share with me, I thought was something important, and I didn't want her to feel as though she had been slighted. And I know that living through the things that she's lived through, it could become very easy to believe that there was something more nefarious behind taking the episode off or not playing the full episode. And I wanted to convey to her, I respect her time, I respect her story, and I wanted to make sure that my audience would get a chance to hear this interview in its entirety. What you're about to see is the raw video interview that I did with Olivia James. She is a member of MK Ultra against her will. She has been part of a shadow government program and is here to shed some light on different aspects and elements of this story. And we had a great conversation. I was extremely pleased and honored to have a chance to chat with her about that. So without further ado, I'm going to step away and allow you to enjoy the interview in its entirety. Now, where there would normally be commercial breaks, I will wrap up and there'll be a 5-second delay or silence. Just stay tuned. The next segment will continue. You'll know when the show is over, and I will be here at the end to wrap it up as well. So thank you very much, and I hope that you enjoyed tonight's program. It was a good one, and I'm glad I'm getting a chance to share it with you. Good evening, Darklings. Tonight's show promises to dive deep into some of the most compelling and controversial topics we've ever covered. My guest, Olivia James, has lived through experiences that blur the lines between the paranormal, the occult, and government involvement in secret programs like MK Ultra. Her journey has led her to uncover extraordinary abilities, everything from remote viewing and astral travel to a unique form of voluntary possession she calls hosting. We'll explore her encounters with entities, demons, and aliens and delve into the unsettling connections between these forces and hidden government agendas. Get ready for a mind-bending ride as we pull back the veil on this shadowy world. We cover all that and more right here on your home for the very best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave Schrader, and this is the Paranormal 360 on News Talk 830 WCCO. Joining me right now on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline, Olivia James. Olivia, thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is a remarkable story. When you sent me your original email and said, I want to get some of this information out, I want to let people know about it, the first kind of overload to my brain is, wow, this is a lot to digest, but it's
heavy,
fascinating.
yes.
Yeah.
It's very heavy information.
All right. So kind of covering in that opening a little bit of the details of what we're going to get into, maybe you could start us at the beginning of your journey and how you got folded into this.
Yes, of course. Usually I like to start way, way back and talking about my parents and how I actually got pulled into this whole life, strange life. So that's kind of where I usually start because that's probably the most important thing to realize for some people. So
All
I
right.
always say this, I always say that I had very interesting parents and an interesting upbringing. My father, he was in the military. He was in military intelligence. He got recruited for military intelligence at 18 years old, so very young. And he was doing code breaking and some other work on the German-Russian border, and that was during the 60s. So when he was released from the military, he came out of the military and he started got into things such as drug trafficking. So this drug trafficking is what helped him kind of rise in his situation, being a very small town person to somebody who, has been described as having, you know, rooms full of products and things like that in their room. So he went through this whole process and he was doing really well. He actually was able to fly a plane. He used a boat. He used a car. They used bus to do their trafficking. And this was in the 60s. So if anybody wanted to research and see how drug trafficking tied into the government, all you have to do is research. It's very public information about how they were tied together. So if we
So,
want to think
Olivia,
about
you're
that,
saying your father was in the military
yes.
and was involved in drug trafficking. Was that for the military or was that on his own level? Was that him doing something illegal for his own gain?
That and in connection to a three-letter agency.
Okay, fascinating. All right.
Yes. So once he was doing really well, he was very young. Him and my mother both were doing this work. My mother was doing a lot of the bus smuggling. She would take the products across the border, strapped to her, and she never got into any trouble. They never got caught, so they said. But what with the downfall is my father started to get addicted to his own supply, and he started messing things up. He wasn't making the drops properly. Things weren't going as well as he would have hoped. And in doing that, there was a lot of targeting to him and his business in the town where he's from. And he ended up getting raided quite a few times. They weren't happy with his behavior. So there was a very public trial, huge trial, and it was a really big deal in the town where we're from. And in the end, after all this dramatics happened, and, things that you would see like on TV, in the end, he was totally exonerated from it and was given a local government job. So they
Hmm.
hired somebody that was a known drug trafficker and drug addict to become, part of the government, publicly after saying they said that they had the wrong person and just let it go after all this time. So, I mean, anybody can read into that. We can
Right.
speculate as much as we want. But the matter of it is, I learned that he was able to get out of his situation is because what he did is sign over me to, you know, their programs. They wanted something
Wow.
for helping him to get out and to stay out of prison. He really did this to save himself. And I think he felt like he saved everyone by just allowing them to have me. And, a lot of times I want to say, I want to make sure people know that when I'm talking about this, my father has passed away. He's been passed away for a long time. But the reason why I have such current information is because of my psychic abilities. And I use a form of, like I said, voluntary possession. I call it hosting, and actually entities taught me that word. They say what I'm doing is hosting. So I'm allowing somebody to take over my body and speak through me. So it's quite different from just remote viewing or channeling or, you know, just a basic trance. It's very involved. And that's how I got a lot of this information from him directly, is he came through me as a gift and told me, directly what
All right.
happened and what had
Now,
happened to him.
I want people to realize this isn't just some bored housewife who started dabbling and trying to communicate with spirits. You were actually part of this MK Ultra program because
Yes.
your parents had signed you over into this.
Yes.
Uh, we've got about a minute and a half left in the segment. At what age did you enter the program?
7.
7 years old. Now,
Yes.
do you have a lot of memory regarding those times?
Yes. And that's that's another part that I've always had a strange paranormal connection. I've always had strange memories, but the memories came flying back. I had a near death experience, and in the years following that is when I had a lot of conscious recall of things that I would have never thought of somebody like me being involved in things like that. And it really gave me a lot of anxiety and panic and pressure. And I became very withdrawn and emotional, and
I can only imagine.
that instability came from not knowing what it all was and what it all meant. And that's where I started to begin the journey of trying to find out and expand more on those memories. And that's how I got into, learning about, what happened to me, and even discovered my own abilities in that journey.
Olivia James is our guest this evening, and this is a big story. This is unusual, frightening, and really kind of bends the consciousness towards what we're doing, what our agencies in our country are doing, and how young they are recruiting people to be parts of these programs. When we return, we'll find out about those opening steps for Olivia. What was it like for her to enter this program, and how quickly do they develop somebody in the MK Ultra program? We'll discuss that and more. Stay tuned. We've got a lot more to talk about right here on the Paranormal 360. Welcome back to the program. This is Dave Schrader. You're listening to the Paranormal 360 on News Talk 830 WCCO. Olivia James, our guest. Olivia, age 7, you are turned over to this agency. Now, are you still
Yes.
allowed to live at home with your parents, or are you basically in a government facility for this?
Well, what happened to me is I was taken to a psychiatric hospital on the East Coast. And from what I remember, there was only me and another child in this particular program. It was a boy, a young boy. So they did a lot of what they used is something called trauma-based mind control, and a lot of people can read it in my book if you want the more gory details of that. But they were using this process of systematic abuse and psychological abuse as well, in order to compartmentalize the brain and to make these almost like pockets or holes in your brain and in your personality that can be reprogrammed. Type of like setting the blank, setting a blank slate in order to reprogram it into different things that they would be able to use at a later date for different jobs or work or anything that they found beneficial to keep their agencies in power. So
So
that's how.
essentially, they're breaking the will and spirit and the natural progression of who Olivia James is at a very early age. So now they can direct your initiative for the rest of your life.
Yes, and they created
Wow.
several what we call alters inside me. I personally have 118 that I've discovered. Other people have more, other people have less. And so in the current day, psychology would say that would be called, dissociative identity disorder. And previously it was called multiple personality disorder.
Right.
Did I know throughout my life that that was exactly what was happening to me? No. But when I look back and I see some of my behaviors throughout my entire life, yes, I can see how things would switch for me so quickly by codes, by triggers, by numbers, by sound, by sight, so many different ways that you can turn yourself from your original self back into an alter. And before I knew about all these, some of these were triggered and I was not able to control it and I was not able to control them, not like I am now.
Olivia,
So,
let me ask you something real quickly. We're going to jump ahead just briefly. But now what you know about hosting, about these kind of
yes.
allowable possessions, do you believe that of these 118 altars, that they are truly fragments of you and your personality? Or did they open up doorways within Olivia James that these entities, whatever, wherever they come from, are the actual altars? As though, like a computer, they defragged all the spots that were open, they plugged in these different personalities from different beings to control so that they would have like one main switchboard to work from.
It's a separate thing, but I
Okay.
also have an altar that I would consider an occult altar, and
Okay.
that is the main one that can do this. And it's based this is really strange, but the reason why I can do this is based on something that not only I found, but they also found when I was at the psychiatric hospital. Because the main programmer, she was a female, kind of like an older woman, and you know, I grew up very poor in a very strange environment due to my parents. So she was someone that I had never been around before. The way she was, I kind of looked at her as kind of like an ethereal being, just her appearance and everything. That's not the type of person I grew up around. And so her doing this, she was able to um, see, use hypnosis on me, even at that young of age. And she saw how deep I could go under trance and how easily I could dissociate. And that's one of the major abilities. I consider it an ability, is dissociation. So when things are harming me or there's some type of stressor in my environment, I'm able to detach from that. So it's almost like escaping pain or escaping trauma in a way. So I was able to do that. So what she saw inside me is what I was able to tell her, and it was a big deal for me to realize this. And when I first started going under hypnosis, I saw myself, who I used to be. And whether, I I'm not going to say I did believe or did not believe in reincarnation at this point. It wasn't something that was proven to me until I saw it with my own eyes and my own personal experience. And when I say with my own eyes, I mean my spirit eyes. And I saw this so deeply inside me. I saw who I was before. And that's what they had seen, and why they had chosen me for certain projects is because of who I had been before. And that's what they thought I'd be good for. So
Was it, do you think in part they give you these altars so that when they call upon an altar to do something, if you are ever caught, captured, broken, whatever it is, your main personality, that of Olivia James, has culpable, or I should say, probable deniability. Um,
exactly,
oh, really? So
exactly.
given
I would
a
not
stress
know.
test or lie
My
test, you wouldn't know that this is what you have done.
No, my front self, I
Wow.
call it my front self or my real self, my original self, would not know that. And that's such a great way to complete, work like espionage. Like I was involved in a lot of espionage, and
Wow.
that's corporate espionage. And that was a way because I could hide it so deep with my dissociation as well. They wouldn't be able to find it. And that's a specific trait that they like for interrogation or something like that. They wouldn't realize, and I could hide it so deep. And a lot of other survivors can do the same thing. We hide the information and we don't realize it, and that's why so many of us are almost going through life and not having a realization of things we used to do, or I don't want to say we used to do, but we're forced to do. We did not
When
have a choice.
when they're doing this type of training, breaking you down, punching these holes into who you are so that you can be filled with these different personalities, basically teaching you how to dissociate. Do you think that that's what strengthened your ability as you continue to grow, to be able to channel, to be able to allow something else into you, because you already know how to step away from who you are and let something else take over?
In a part, that's way, and also from what I've learned in a part is because the reason why I can touch dark entities, because I am one. I was one in a past life, and that doesn't just disappear from you. And that's what I've learned, and what I've been able to see.
Well, now you say that you were a dark entity. Are you talking about you were just a bad human being, bad guy, or were you something demonic?
Something, yes, in a past life, from what I've seen, I was something called what they call a dark jinn, so a dark entity. And in that lifetime, I was a parasitical entity, and I would enter people and travel through their bloodstream like a virus.
Oh,
And
so
I
you
would
weren't in a physical form like looking at Dave Schrader, that is my incarnation. The incarnation between lives, you were this force.
it was a real thing. I know it to be real. I know her to be real because you can still feel it. Just like
Right,
you
but I
can.
mean, you weren't
Yeah.
born into a physical form. It was born into an elemental or a spiritual
Yes,
form.
yes,
Okay.
and from what I know, it's very difficult to be physical, and when you're a dark entity, it's very hard to become physical. We much rather travel as energy because that's easier for us, to find well, we called it prey at the time, and that's what we called it in the ancient times. And those times were different, though. I always called it a seductive time because the ancient times were different, and the way we stalked our prey and found them, it was different than it is today. We don't need that darkness so much because you can find your darkness next door.
Olivia James, our guest. Olivia, when we come back, I want a tough question thrown your way. I know I'd be doing a disservice to the listeners if I didn't at least ask this. Knowing what you'd been through, knowing what had happened to you against your will, being brought to this government, shadow government conspiracy program, MK Ultra being broken down. How do you know that the ideas and thoughts that you have now are real and not something imagined because of your fractured personality? We'll cover that when we return right here on the Paranormal 360. We're back. This is Dave Schrader, and my guest, Olivia James, is joining me now on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline. Before the break, Olivia, I asked a big question. How do you know that the experiences, that the past lives, that the things that you believe to be real are not just false memories that have been implanted in you by the shadow conspiracy government?
Yes. So I want to start in saying that anything that happened with my parents in terms of their lifestyle, that's very provable by court documents. That's number one. My father's military career and intelligence, that's provable by his military records. So that's number one, that those two things can be proven by just, regular records. And in terms of how I am experiencing life, I've worked with several what I would consider hypnotherapists. And in terms of me shifting my consciousness to a different state, you are able to connect to what I would call like the higher self or the highest self. And in that situation, I am shifting realities in myself. So I never deny, what I've seen or what I've experienced. And it's been
Sure.
mind blowing to see all this stuff. And like I said, I don't want to say I believed or didn't believe before this. It just wasn't in my realm of experience. So I do, you know what? For a time I'm a human. So I
Right.
questioned everything. I of course question everything, but that's why I
I mean,
looked
you would have to,
so long.
because this
I
this
did.
whole thing would break most people.
I did.
And to have that knowledge has got to be, in a way, terrifying and exhilarating in the same breath.
I was terrified my entire life of I felt like I always had something following me. And when
Mhm.
we think about the paranormal, I felt the demonic presence all the time. And what I found it to be, what was the scariest thing, is this main demonic presence. It was what I discovered, something called a survival altar. It was this looked like a possessed child, a little girl. She would follow me everywhere. She would, at night she would cause sleep paralysis. She would
Wow.
sit on my chest. I couldn't breathe. There was nights I was choking and choking, and this would go on for a year. And I was literally terrified of everything. I was afraid of everything, which is so strange now because of what I can do. But it was because I was afraid of myself. She was the ghost in the room. She was the thing reaching out in the shadows. It was her, and that person, that was me. And that's my survival altar. And then when she comes around, and she makes an appearance in my mind or in my present realities, because there is a threat in the immediate environment. So
Do
she's
you,
made to keep me alive. So
do
if
you
there's
believe that?
something wrong, she'll show
Mhm.
me.
Do you believe that part of that feeling of being followed in some dark force is also a remnant of what you were in your past life?
Of course. And
Okay.
now that I'm able to speak to so many different entities and allow them to speak through me and use my body, they have told me so much, and it's really interesting information. Um, I was really afraid at first, and actually the first time I did it, I was working with somebody that probably wasn't kind of had a different view of the situation, and they tried to
Mhm.
do like a exorcism and all this, but it didn't work because what the problem was, it's not an attachment, it's me. She was
Right.
trying to exercise something that was just inside me always. It's because, of a past life. It's not the current me, but in the same sense, I can't make it disappear. I can't, delete it from my experience. I don't think that's
Right.
a possibility. So So the
Now,
now these oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, just so we can track back for listeners that may not be familiar, we're throwing around a lot of terms. We talk about MK Ultra. Were you at the age of 7 turned over into the MK Ultra program, or did it start somewhere else and you moved up into that program? And can you give a quick little explanation to listeners of what MK Ultra is?
MK Ultra, they use that. It's basically mind control. They're
Hmm.
trying to train the mind. So they were using trauma-based mind control. And so they would traumatize the child in various ways in order to create those compartmentalized parts in your brain. So yes, I started at MK Ultra and at the psychiatric hospital. And it went on for only 6 months because they said me and this other child were prized pupils. So that meant we could take to the abuse, we could dissociate, and we were able to leave our bodies in a way. And they thought that we would do very well. So they referred me, the main handler that I was aware of, the woman, she referred me out to a specific doctor called Dr. Green. So when I went to Dr. Green's office, I was just a child. Like I said, I had been referred out. Um, he brought me in his office and he had very neutral. I can see it in my head, very neutral type. It almost looked like an attorney's office. He had two other people in his office when I got there, and they looked like twins. They were very light skin, very light hair, and they didn't really speak a lot. And he directed them to look me over in a way. And they did a lot of strange things, like open my mouth, open my eyes and look in my eyes. You look very, very strange,
Hmm.
type of examination. And they turned to him and they said, yes, we can see the thing inside her. And that's when I was recruited by him. He had a side project called Project Traveler. And from what I know, some of these agencies are not on, they're looking for different types of beings. They want to harness this power because there is extreme power behind the dark side. So they wanted to harness this power and they wanted to make it like a scientific experiment almost. So there's a project called Project Ibis that is more looking for light beings, and then a project called Traveler that's looking for the darker beings that fell in the beginning. So they're trying to find all this. And like I said, they thought that I had a lot of attachments and things like that,
Wait,
but they're wrong.
Olivia, are you saying the government and these shadow agencies are so arrogant to believe they might be able to try to control demons and angels?
They do. And they've made them a lot of promises. They've made connections, they've made contracts with a lot of these beings, because that's what the demons have told me, that they make contracts with them themselves. But
Now, are these beings truly what we would say as biblical theological demons and angels, or to current day would we be referring to aliens?
from what they're separate categories because I've met
Okay.
both. I've
All
I've
right.
host I've hosted both, and the demonic entity heard from them, they are very one track minded and very much are saying that we've kind of destroyed this world and they'd like to come back and take it back, because they said in the beginning, a long time ago, there was a huge barrier placed in between our world and theirs, and they're not able to move freely, and they have to wait for an invitation, just like that old myth about vampires have to be invited in. This is
Right.
they say that that came from them, that they have to be invited in order to control somebody. And that is true, especially being a dark entity myself. I had to wait for something called a heart call, and when I describe that, it means I'm waiting for somebody that is kind of like a weaker constitution or is having a very rough time and wanted somebody else to take control of them. That's where my Jinn self would have watched them and infiltrated their life and tried to wait for the time to take over, because they did offer me to let me take over. And they would say, let me in, and that would happen.
All right, we need to take another break here. I would like to throw this out to you to think about during the commercial, but black-eyed kids, these entities that are known to travel sometimes in packs of 2, 3, or 4, that try to gain entry into people's homes, into their vehicles, or have you follow them. If they are working with children in the MK Ultra programs and they're allowing them to become hosts for these demonic beings, A, do you know anything about the black-eyed kids? And B, are they part of this program? We'll discuss that here on the Paranormal 360 next. Welcome back to the program. Boy, if you've missed any part of tonight's show, remember, you can always listen to the program on the Odyssey app by following WCCO Radio. As a matter of fact, tell your smart devices to set an alarm every Sunday night to tune in at 7 p.m. Central and never miss another episode right here on WCCO Radio. I'm Dave Schrader, your host on this journey into the strange. My guest is Olivia James. Olivia, first, are you familiar with the black-eyed kids phenomena?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Okay. These children that are seen around the world that have completely jet black eyes, not just the color of their eye, but the entire sclera black. They try to gain entrance into people's homes by getting a lot, we need to use your phone. Can we use your phone? We've got to get home. Can we borrow your phone? Could you give us a ride home? They're always trying to gain entrance and get that permission, which follows into the demonic and vampiric history and folklore. Do you think that these beings are in fact humans like you that have been manipulated to be a host, or are they something altogether different?
I don't want to speculate too much, but I would think there's something different in terms of, I know the tagline that demons use, and it's "let me in." That's the main thing that, even as a jinn, I was looking for, is that particular statement. Let me, I would say, "Let me in." And if the person agreed, that would be my chance to go in and take over. And what I would do is, after infiltrating them, I would prey upon their fears. I would prey upon their mind until, I would make them harm themselves or other people and pretty much destroy their entire lives. And that's how I lived for a lot of thousands of years. I did that. I lived a long time doing that because that's how I fed myself. Being a virus, being a parasite, that's how I fed myself. And like I said, it was a different time then. So, you know, when we're thinking of evil and darkness, we don't need this is how the demons and demonic and the dark side feels. They feel like we felt like we were elder gods. I'm not going to say that we were gods or anything like that, because people get mad when I say that, but we considered ourselves elder gods at that time because of we were worshipped and we were revered. People would sacrifice things to us. Not just saying, I'm thinking mostly like from what I've seen, like harvest and things like that, they would give
Right.
that to us and they would make altars to that. So that's something that is still in a lot of demons, that they are still wanting that reverence and that,
Honor.
devotion. Yes. And it's gone. And that's when they said to me, they told me that the gods are dying. They said, if we have no one to worship us, we die. So it's a mad dash to try to, gain more followers and actually come back to this world, because they're trying to prevent their own deaths in a way. If nobody's there to worship them, if you don't believe them in them, they die. But we have so much evil and darkness now that we don't really have a need for the demonic. And that's what they said. It's more of entertainment now. They said nobody believes in us anymore. We've become down to like something you see out of a movie, and we're real, we're here, and I know they're real, I know they're here, and that they're waiting for people. And a lot of people do allow them to come in and take over, because it's been happening since ancient times.
We've heard of other programs like Project Pegasus, which appears to be a time travel and interplanetary travel project that also brought in young children to work in these environments. Were you cross-referenced through these different projects, or were you strictly
Yes.
part of one?
No. I did something. I did a lot of work that they had trained me for, called what I call beta tracking. And that's a lot of kind of like intel gathering. I was something called an intelligence scribe. So I had an altar that would record information. So they would put me in various situations where my brain could be recording that. And I wouldn't know, my front self wouldn't know. All they had to do was put me in a trance or under hypnosis and gain that intelligence that was placed way back in my mind. And I know that to be true because of the way I can do, hypnotic trance now. It's become so easy for me. I'm like, I can see how they had done it before, and that there's probably so much information in my mind that could be released, just with a word, or just like if I got to that deep level. So it was really interesting that after I did this beta tracking work, I got a promotion for doing a job well done. And I was about 19, 20, and they actually sent me to Mars. And the promotion, included something, what I call I worked in a corporate office. So it's not like some of the other people that are saying they worked in this huge military groups and were fighting aliens and things like that. I was sent to work in a corporate office because they had trained me for something called personality profiling. And so in terms of profiling, it was not a basic psychological profiling. It was almost like reading another person. And I was actually trained on the moon for that at 13 years old. I even remember the person that trained me. And she was so strict with me. Because she told me I have to be quick. And she was trying to save my life. She said, "You have to be quick." She said, "It's going to take one look and one word for you to be able to know what's happening with this person. If there's going to be trouble, if you could be hurt, you have to know just by one handshake what this person is about." She was trying to help me because I was so young that if I didn't do this right and I didn't do it quick, I could be hurt or harmed, or the mission could go wrong, what they wanted us to do. So I was using that particular ability in the corporate sector on Mars for Mars Defense Force. What I did was I would bring in new recruits to my office, and I would spend about, I don't know, maybe an hour with them. And we would talk about all different things. And just in their words is how I was able to focus on what type of job they would be good for. So that was how I got to make recommendations, just by speaking to them about their interests, their strengths, weaknesses, that kind of thing. And not everybody was placed in some kind of like special sector. I called special sector if somebody had an ability that I could recognize, but most people were, working in some of the other fields. Like they had an entertainment division, water treatment, waste treatment, mining, drilling, resources, there's even archaeological, side. So there was so many different projects. There's people, they need regular people like for stores, for plumbing, for cleaning, janitorial, and a
Right.
lot of people got placed in those basic jobs. Those were the new recruits coming in. Some of the super soldiers, they were in special sector. So I didn't really deal with them a lot. They would get referred out to a different agency. So I was
Oh,
like the front line for that.
we've got just a minute left here. Amazing. The other skill and talent that you talked about, that tracking, was that form of remote viewing in a sense?
Beta tracking is infiltrating someone else's life, finding your mark. It's almost like tracking them down and,
But
gathering
is it doing
influence
it psychically, or is it
Mhm.
doing it as
Physically.
physically? So you're spying, you're integrating into
Yes.
their lives. All
Yes.
right. We are up against the top of the hour break here. Amazing conversation. Our guest, Olivia James, here this evening. My big question that I'll throw to you before we go to the top of the hour break, something again I want to cover when we come back. Being somebody that's been a part of these shadow government conspiracy programs, aren't you in danger by now coming forward and sharing this intel, especially on something like this, a national radio show? We'll do that next, right here on the Paranormal 360. Welcome back, my darklings. In this hour, we're going to continue our conversation with Olivia James, digging a little deeper into her extraordinary experiences with government programs like MK Ultra, the occult, and her unique ability of hosting, which is voluntary possession of entities and beings, from demons to aliens. Olivia is sharing what they've revealed through her trance work and how it ties into hidden agendas. Stick around for more as we uncover the darker side of the unknown. I'm Dave Schrader. This is my Paranormal 360. Olivia, before the break, I asked if you are part of a shadow group and government conspiracy program like this. I can't guess that they're happy that you're out doing my radio show and releasing books and showing your side of the story. Or have they made it so fantastical sounding that they're not worried that you're going to make any dent in their programs, because who's going to believe you?
Exactly. And I actually under trans when I actually do something called remote viewing.
Mhm.
So I'm able to bilocate, even astral travel. And so when I'm remote viewing a place, I'm not just looking at coordinates and seeing this. I'm there. I'm using the ghost dimension to travel there. So
Okay.
I
But are you in danger now for coming forward and sharing this information?
yes, but we are all in danger, all of us, for what's going on in the world. And from this being hidden so long, we have all been in danger since the beginning. So that's how I kind of look at it, that
Okay.
yes, I'm in danger, but we're all in danger too. If we don't get this information out, it could be, it could continue, and it has continued under different project names. So yes, they have publications on different websites about, you know, how they would release the information and things like that. But then it has also continued under sub projects. It's not over. They continue to do this. They just use different techniques now. They have kind of stopped doing so much trauma-based mind control because they've gained so much technology in terms of chemicals and things like that. They don't feel like they need to do that. But from what I've been told, it doesn't have the same effect as when they would break us down through trauma. So they're not having exact same results as they did before, now that they're using chemical and other technology, which has increased.
Now you say that we're all in danger. I need to go back to that again, and especially with looking at the way the world is, we've got wars possibly brewing on almost every major front. We've got the possibility of alien disclosure at hand. The government's slowly spoon feeding us information and giving us this. We're in the middle of another volatile political situation within our country. What are we in danger of specifically that you want the world to know about?
Of this continuum, children are going to continue to be taken, to be found, to be utilized for these programs. It's modern day slavery. They're taking them, they're bringing them here, they're taking them off planet, they're doing all that type of things. And I mean, it could
Okay.
be anybody's child. It could be, anybody I've talked to. It could be their child at any point. You
Hmm.
know, they, how would you know, you know, before it's too long? So there's so much. I was going to say that when I did a side remote viewing, I actually was able to remote view and to go to my own handler's house. And they're remote handlers now. They're under the cover of like a medical insurance company. So you won't know who they are. They have their own cover, but they're called remote handlers. And these are the people that are assigned to assets after they've returned home and they're done, doing the work that, we get too old or whatever. They're assigned to us, and they're there to monitor the care and control of us for the rest of our lives, to ensure that we're not gaining memories, we're not talking too much, we're not doing all the things that we're not supposed to be doing, because we're supposed to be
Well,
programmed.
they seem to be failing where it comes to
They
you because
are.
these things are coming back and you're out talking about it.
Yes. And it's a small portion of people that are getting memories back, but I think the more we continue, the more people will be able to grasp it, because it is scary to have this come flooding back to you and not know what's going on. But the handlers, they use various techniques. And from what I saw, I came up right behind him. I was in his house, and he was a telepath. So he could hear me and I could hear him, and he knew that I was there because he heard me in his head. And he's been trained too. There is a handler division that they train people for this. So, but what I thought was interesting is that there was a ghost in his house. It was his grandmother. She could see me and I could see her. So I was using the ghost dimension to travel. And that was a huge discovery for me, that I'm just not out here. I'm actually traveling the same path as like some of these spirits, these discarnates. And
So
she's telling
from
me,
what we understand of remote viewing being more of a psi, being a
yes,
mental visitation, almost like turning on a CCTV camera in somebody's presence or home or location that your target is, you are doing that, but you're also sending an astral form of yourself to that
yes,
location. So
yes,
in that element, I'm curious, if you're able to see ghosts, how many things that we're experiencing within our own homes are truly the dead, as opposed to agents like Olivia James coming to collect data and information regarding who we are and what we do?
yes. And that's when I was going to say that some shadow people we think are ghosts, and it's actually remote viewers like myself. It could be, not saying all, but there could be, because I did see a ghost and I see them, but it could be somebody that's remote viewing that area, because you do
Mm.
look like a ghost. You are using that ghost dimension. So they would think of you as a ghost. But he knew that I wasn't a ghost. And he told me, he's like, pretty much, get out of here. You're supposed to be asleep. Why are you here? What do you want? And very rude, and some of them are like that. They're on the attack once you've reached them and found out. And he pretty much told me, you could tell whoever you want, say whatever you want. No one will believe you. He said, it does not matter what any of you say. Nothing about what you say is believable, and we're going to continue. And he said that I was he said that I was combative, and I could see him typing on his computer. He said that asset is combative and that I was journeying toward memories and that measures would have to be taken. And what I saw him typing was something called spleen and tremors. And he wanted to use the machines that he had in order to harm me physically. And they make a lot of us ill, and they can do it just with machinery, different directed energy weapons, that kind of thing. And he had two of them. One was called the Green Devil and one was called the Wasp. And he could have used either one of those to control me.
All right, we are up against another break. I am getting some information from the stylesfinancial.com talk and text line from listeners who would like, when we return, to talk a little bit about the journey that you have been on to Mars and the moon. Again, is this something that's done in an astral form? Are they physically transporting you there? If so, is it done like a teleportation? Are they opening portals, or are you using a craft to traverse these great distances? Olivia James is our guest this evening, and we are going deep into the world of high strangeness, folks. You're going to want to stay tuned. If you missed anything in the first segment, remember, just go to WCCO Radio and check the Sunday night programming guide there. You'll be able to check out these podcasts, or go to my website at paranormal60.com. That's paranormal60.com, and click on the 360 link for more. Welcome back to the program. Joining me on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline, we have a guest, Olivia James, and we have links for Olivia James' books on today's program guide as well, so you can go even more in depth. This 2 hours is going to fly right by. But Olivia, from the stylesfinancial.com talk and text line, questions coming in. She said she went to the moon and to Mars. We need more information. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes. So when I went to the moon, I was 13. So I was still a kid. And when I was 13, I looked like I was 9. So I was very small, very, very tiny. Leads to my, name, the gray mouse. So when I went there, like I said, I just had one small room. And when I got there, I took a train. From what I remember as a child, I took a train. There was a gentleman dressed up in a suit, and he was holding my hand. And I don't remember and I never really talked as a child very often. I was very quiet child, very, introverted. I never spoke. And so when I took his hand, and especially being programmed, you're programmed to not ask questions. You don't ask questions. That's not allowed. So I didn't ask questions. I went with the gentleman. We got on something that looked like a train, and I was there on the moon. And from what I could remember, there was one small room that I was staying in. And in the training room, it almost looked like...
All right, Olivia, hold on a second. So you got on some type of train.
Yes.
And you travel to the moon. So it's got to be some kind of teleportation device or interdimensional travel.
I think it was more like a travel portal type thing that they've created. And to me, it's not out of the ordinary, especially with what I've seen and what
right. But to the millions of listeners tuning in right now, this sounds insane. So I just want to understand. It's not like you jumped on a train at Hogwarts and then went up into the sky to the moon. I just want people to understand that.
And it's so weird because when I say, oh, yes, I went to the moon for training, and I didn't go there to see aliens or anything like that. It was very, very businesslike and very serious. And they weren't going to have me in the class because I was so young, but I was given a special pass because they said, based on my bloodline, that I needed to be in this program because of what they thought I could do. Okay. And so when we're talking about the bloodline, a lot of people that have some innate abilities are what we have discovered are a particular bloodline. And many of them are, kind of lost, they had been lost over time, and they were originally part of a specific royal bloodline. And that doesn't mean that you're better or worse than anyone else. It just means that particular bloodline had some innate psychic ability that they wanted to continue to monitor and to track. So
you went to the moon for a form of training.
Yes.
Right. And is this the bases and the things that they've seen on the dark side of the moon?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it's an underground base, and I think it was level 13, and like I said, it was it looked like a college. It looked like that level looked like a college. I went to, like, something that looked like a college classroom with there was no windows or anything. It was just, like, painted cement around, and, like I said, my teacher was very firm, and she's very strict with me. She was kind of younger. She looked like she was about 27, but then everybody on base looked young, and even on Mars too, everyone looks young, but you're old on the inside, it seems like, but you look young. But she was very firm, and and there was other people in the classroom. They were all adults except for me. And there was people, one person could talk to animals. One person had this strange ability where they could expel moisture from their bodies, but it almost looked just like he was leaking water. It didn't look like a special X-Men ability or anything
I was
like
gonna
that.
say I'm
Yeah.
probably one of those mutants because I sweat all the time,
Yeah,
so I
that's what I
didn't
was
know
like.
that.
I wasn't sure. Like, maybe he could do more than that, but that's as far as
Right.
I saw, is that he could leak it. So I
Lamest
don't know.
superpower ever. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And I was like one of the people that were there just to learn profiling and to be able to utilize that in, future work that would be it's like the teacher already knew that I would be planned to do espionage, and that's what they wanted me for. And that to me was the hardest work. The most threats you will get is from espionage, because you're fighting and you're working against huge powers, and these companies that we're trying to gather information on, and almost like they were gaining leverage on them. These people are that have so much power, they have so much money. And so what these agencies that I had to work for, what they told me is the way to take these people down is you take their money. So we were trying to gain, and we're definitely not. To me, I don't some of these agencies, they say that they're working for things like an alliance or the light the light workers, and I never felt that. As I was forced to work for them, I didn't have a choice, and it was always to me a threat of death if I didn't do something
Mm,
correctly. So of course I don't feel good about having to have done that stuff. I felt forced. It was nothing. We never got It's not like we ever got paid for that. You
right.
barely got anything. You don't get anything. You just get threatened. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And these powers are huge. I remember I had to go infiltrate into it's huge media company. It's a huge media company. So I had to go infiltrate this building, and there was me and two other girls that were in the programs. And what we did first is there was a local bar right around the corner, and we went there, and we were just normally to kind of stake out the place, because we knew there was a lot of people that came from that building that would go there for happy hour and things like that. So we were just there to, kind of get a feel for what we needed to know before we went in there. And the day we went in there, I was very nervous. I was very stressed, but you can't show it. Any sign of anxiety on your face could destroy the whole mission. You can't, you're not even allowed to
Right.
sweat. So at some point, even your programming will not allow you to sweat. You can't sweat because
See,
of the
that's what that
programming
guy's
is so deep.
superpower is, Olivia. He's
Yes.
sweating for all of you. That's
Yes,
his
he
gift.
is. So we wouldn't even be allowed to sweat. So your mind
Right.
controls so much of your behavior. You're doing things like, I could even remember every little detail I was doing, how I would look at somebody, how I would smile or not smile, how my arms would move, what I was carrying, what I was wearing, every piece of my body language, everything on my face had to be perfect. So they didn't realize something was going on. And we went in there as cleaning staff to try to see, where there was
Mhm.
something in there that we had to either, we would always have to switch some information, steal some information, or put information into one of their computers. And their computer room was this big, huge system room, and it was guarded. So it was going to be really hard for us to get in there. We ended up doing it because we went after hours, but it they we got kind of caught, and they became suspicious, and we ended up having to go down an elevator shaft. And the reason why that was stressful is because when we got out there was supposed to be a car waiting for us, and it was gone. And I just left them other two. At that point, it's like every man for themselves. And I
Right.
just put a hoodie on, and I started walking towards, the worst neighborhood I could find, because nobody's going to be looking for me there. And that's what I did. I walked there. I don't know what the other two girls did and how they got to where, but we missed our mark because we weren't on time, and they're not going to wait for you. They don't care. This is an important mission. We're
Right.
expendable to them, so they wouldn't wait for us. So we
We
ended
have
up
1 minute left in this segment.
sure.
Really quickly, Mars. Do we have an active base and research facility and things going on there?
Yes. Very, very much so. Very, and a whole active world there. There's an entire world there of human colonies. So, and they're doing a lot of work. There's even a base there called Harcourt. It's on Mars. and they're doing
Okay.
a lot of experimentation that is what I consider probably evil, and not just to humans, but to other races that they're harming.
And did you take that same train form of transportation to get to Mars?
No, we took a ship. We took a ship there, and
Okay, you're not meaning like the Love Boat. You're meaning like a rocket or a craft.
yes, a craft, and
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Uh, I know what you're thinking, folks. I know you're listening in, and your minds are forcing themselves to try to expand, and you're fighting against it. This show is a great way for you to exercise new consciousness, to open up and give yourselves a chance to see beyond the world in front of you and ask the big question, what if? We'll do that next, right here. Welcome back to the program. I'm Dave Schrader. This is the Paranormal 360. Olivia James, our guest this evening. Olivia, this next half an hour is going to fly by. I know we've got so much to discuss. I'm going to have you come back in
Okay.
future programs to share more with us. But teasing the concept of being able to channel and allow spirits, demonic or alien entities to communicate through you is something that I find fascinating. And again, I'm guessing has been a bigger part of your training through these shadow organizations and programs, or are these just things that you've developed over time because the training opened you up to new elements of your own life?
I want to say all of it, and it was very complex. And I wanted to share this information that I received from Alien, because I think it's so interesting.
Please.
Because we have visions of aliens, and how they live, and we always, a lot of people consider them evil or bad, and we always have that duality, dark and bad and good aliens. But I was able to go under very deep hypnosis trance, very deep, the deepest I've ever gone, and I could barely even speak. I was so gone, so far gone, but I was able to let this being take over my body, a mantid, and it said it was me in a parallel life, which I'm not. I believe it because I felt everything from him, and he didn't speak in words because his language was through his antennas, so it was vibrational. So my entire body shook like I was in the Arctic during the whole thing. But this what the world he described was so interesting. He said he came from a planet, that he lived on a planet called Pormile, and the only way I can spell it is Pormile. And this is the planet that has two black suns. He called it two black suns. And if we were a human looking at this planet, we would consider this planet desolate. There would be nothing for you to look at. Like on the front, it looked like a desert planet, but underneath is where all the life is. Him and his people, they lived in the caves and the caverns, and they've been living there for thousands of years like that. This was their planet. And they called themselves a liquid race of people. They believe that they formed from the waters in the caverns and things like that. And that's how they became a people. That is in their myths. But the day I remote viewed him, his name was something similar. It's a vibrational name, but he translates it in English to Zach, or Zach, really quickly.
Mhm.
And the day I saw him, he was standing on top of a mountain, and he told me he was something what they call a scout. And he's there to signal back to the rest of his people if he sees, something amiss down, because they all live in the caverns, and he goes up and sees. Because if somebody were to find out where they were, they could destroy their entire planet and place. So he saw a human colony, and there are explorers going to this planet and trying to find their resources, because that's what humans are doing. They're out here exploring for resources and power, and they're trying to colonize different places. So he saw a little tiny base there, and there was a lot of military people there, and he knew in him, he said, I can't let this happen. So I've seen him just rip this guy to shreds and throw it back at the base, because he said that that's the best way, that they won't come back if he does that. He said they won't be back for a while when he does that. So, but what him being doing something so scary, but I also felt such like patience in him and kindness in him. It wasn't I didn't feel evil. He even apologized to the gentleman before he hurt him. He's like, I'm sorry about this, but I can't let you pass. He's saving his whole family. And he said they live off almost like a hive mind. And he had a queen, and he said their queen wasn't so bad. That's what he told me. But what he was talking about, I think, is so amazing. And he was talking about their religion. They have this LG type um, substance that they've used for their whole lives. That's how they are sustained, is by this phosphorescent algae. They store it in their stomachs, and that's how they eat. They use it for light in their homes. They've used it for so many things for so long. They've created a whole religion around it. They call their god Liquid Light Father. And they stay in their caverns, and at night they do this myth telling, and they'll have one of their elders talk about the Liquid Light Father and all his workings and everything he's done throughout time to help other people, and all his travels of where he's gone, almost like the myths of, that some of us humans have about, or stories about gods and things like that. They have their own religion. And so he was doing all this and showing me, how important it is, and how him and his people were working towards to be something like an oversoul. They wanted to help other people. And, a lot of people see mantids as kind of like a scary race. But from what I felt from them, it was very spiritual, very patient, very kind type of, beings. So that was very eye-opening for me in the beginning, to see something so scary looking to be very gentle. And, whether he had to do something
Right.
as a military scout or not, he was very gentle, and they're very gentle people.
You mentioned earlier that in astral travel, when you put yourself out there, you can actually, you're entering the ghost realm. Do
Yes.
do the aliens travel that way as well? And are they aware of the ghosts and the remote viewers and these different elements of astral projection? Is that, I guess the way I'm asking, is that one of the ways that they travel to infiltrate and understand our planet as well?
Definitely some are. Definitely some
Okay.
are. And when I do this, okay, so when I do this astral travel bilocating remote viewing thing, if I come across something dark that wants to harm me, which I have had happen, I don't want to say I'm pretty cool with every demonic entity. That's not the truth. There's been situations where something just hates me, and it will literally try to harm you in the astral, and you think that it doesn't affect you, but it does. Even though it'll hurt your astral body, it does have an impact on you.
Hmm.
So it's scary to have something like choking you, but it's not physically here, but it is choking you. It's very
Right.
intense to have that feeling. I've had that quite a few times where, something, I've gone very far, and there'd be something there waiting for me, like sees me. And there are dark discarnates and dark entities that don't want to be my friend. They don't care who I was before.
Mhm.
They're saying, pretty much get out of here, and, try to pull me into their realm. I have a specific succubus that
Is
sometimes
that when you're
just,
hosting, when
yes.
you're kind of dissociated from your body and letting something else take control? Is that when you're the most vulnerable and they're trying to draw you out?
I have a something what I call an inner portal, and that's in my solar plexus. That's actually where I allow things to enter, or because I'm a receiver, so I pull
Mhm.
things into me. There's other people that have abilities that where they're called expellers, and they will push energy out. And some of those people will be used in like more of like the psychic assassin programs, because they can push energy out. They're creating some kind of like, it's almost like I call it like a psychic voodoo, because they can throw energy at somebody. They can make psychic needles if they wanted to, and to harm somebody with the mind, with their body, with their energy. So me, I'm more pulling things in, they're pulling things out. So I would be more something that's taking something in.
Wow, so much to digest, so much going on. When you allow yourself to channel and host these beings, um, are you calling forth alien? Are you calling forth ghost or demon, or do you just open and whatever is there comes through?
Exactly. I open
Okay.
myself fully, and I literally feel like there's a room full of people just standing in line, and some are shoving some aside, some of the higher level demonic entities, like I don't know, like a Baal, or Bacchus.
Mhm.
Some people like that, they're at the top of the food chain, so they can kind of push everyone to the side. And if they want to speak, they've spoken a lot through me, because nobody will get in front of them in line. Those
Right.
are not two that you would get in front of in line.
We've been told for years that you can't trust the demonic realm. You can't trust these interdimensional travelers, that they're going to give you false narratives. Now, you were brought up through this program, this government shadow program, to break you, to disassociate you, to give you, and strip you of who you are. How do we know then that the information you're getting from these beings is legitimate and just not another way to control us? We'll talk about that next, right here. Olivia James, our guest this evening, one of the most fascinating and disturbing conversations I can say I've had in a long time. Uh, how do we know that the information, and how do you know that the information that you're getting from these beings, whether they are saying they're aliens, ghosts, or the demonic realm, is legitimate information? It's not just more ways to manipulate and break Olivia James.
I asked the same question of myself when I first started, because they were saying things that I I just couldn't imagine it. And for me, when I'm writing I was writing my second book, I really pushed it. I pushed the boundary of what I consider to be duality of our world. I really pushed it far because that's what I was experiencing. I was experiencing this extreme light and this extreme dark. And how was it codependent here? How are they, are they working together? Are they at war? And some of the things that some of these demonic entities are saying were blowing my mind. Like, there was one that said that they worship a god too. And I asked them, where did you come from, kind of thing. They said, same place you came from. We're all from the same place. Things like that. And it totally freaked my brain out. Like, because we're not, as we grow up, many of us in our culture aren't taught those types of things. We're taught to be afraid. We're taught to fight. We're taught to, almost like kill them, and what they were saying was just so different from what I had experienced. I had one experience of hosting that was probably the most mind-blowing thing I've seen. Is I hosted Jesus and Lucifer in the same session, and the messages that were coming through were, he said he would even say, I'm holding his hand, and look at what we can do here in the spirit world, and why can't you guys on earth do that? Look what we have done. This is a message for you all to unite, to stop the fighting, stop everything. And
Why do the demons want us to stop? I thought that's the whole concept, is that demons want us to break. They want control over us and dominion.
that's what I thought too. But it's so different from the way they're speaking, because sometimes when I'm speaking to them, I do something that I call speaking to someone's brain. And it's the only way I can describe it, because I'm not just, doing telepathy. I'm speaking to different parts of the person. It could be a higher self. It could be their personality. It could be a different aspect of them. I'm speaking to all these different parts of them. So I was tapping into something other than what we see a demon as. It's something deeper inside them, just like myself. When I was finding something deeper, there's deeper stuff inside them than just what we've seen. And that was terrifying at first, because I knew that it would be controversial to say those things and to give that information to people about what they say. Imagine how I felt when Jesus and Lucifer together led me in prayer in a session. Imagine how I felt.
Right.
That's it was crazy for them to both say, let us pray, and bring a prayer about for the world. And this, I'm talking about Lucifer, the morning star. And from what
Well,
he
I
said,
guess if we destroy what is put together, what is there to have dominion over, right? It almost
yeah,
it's almost in their benefit that we stay here and continue to thrive in order to have a place to rule.
they almost said that they feel like they're helping us, because they said that they made contracts with the government and that they're tricking them. They said, we're tricking them. So doesn't that help you? That's what they told me. They said, doesn't that help you, since we're tricking them? They made a contract and with some of these programs, they're trying to bring over portals through people and other ways. There's technology that they can open portals for this stuff. And they said, we're tricking them. We told, we made contracts and they don't know, kind of thing. So we're helping you guys. But, there they are still agenda to me. There's still agendas, but there's also agendas with humans. And one thing was really blowing my mind is, when I was a child, they had me at the psychiatric hospital. They were testing this ability of mine to host. They would have me sit in a chair, sensory deprivation, in a room by myself, all dark, no food, nothing. They would have me hooked up to an IV, and they wanted to see, when I did this, when I allowed this entity to take over my body, was there some type of measurable output of energy that they could scientifically come up with. And what I thought was weird is that they wouldn't feed me, they wouldn't give me anything. And it was the entities that were inside me that were sustaining me. So these humans were torturing me, and then the entities were sustaining me and keeping me alive through this. So it is very much a contradiction in my mind of I'm supposed to hate them and care about humans that are torturing me, and these other beings are keeping me alive. It's very like how do you resolve that in your own mind of who's helping and who's not? This is why I think it's so complex and so interesting to even have the discussion just about this, walking duality and contradiction we
Mhm.
have in our world about dark and light. And, it's so important to hear the different sides and different perspectives on what it could be now.
Olivia, let me ask you just not trying to get into the political nature of this, but to kind of give people something to grab onto. I mean, having these abilities, the site, the information that they're giving you, and that we are in one of the most divisive political environments right now. Again, do they give you the information? Do they say this is the outcome of your upcoming election? This is what you're going to have to watch out for next. Are they giving you that information up front?
No, but from what I know, I had an experience where I was taken to this base, and this was not that long ago. I was taken to a base, and I don't know how I got there. And it was a private military. And the private military wanted me to know, and they want the world to know, that there's a group on Earth right now called the Olympia Group. And these are
Mhm.
kids, these are little kids. They're like, I don't know, probably like 12 to 19, 20-ish. And they're called the Olympia Group because these are computer kids. And a lot of us, we want our kids to get off the computer and things like that. But they said these people are very important in the future, this group, because they said that, in 15 years is when the real revolution happens for us here on Earth. And what we're trying to take this world back from those people that have control and are in power and have been in power for a long time. They said this is our chance in 15 years to come to take things back. And they said these kids that are here now are going to be important. They don't know, but the little kids don't know, but they said in about 15 years is when they're going to be important. And we're going to need them because of their technology skills, because much of the battle is going to be based in technology. It won't be so much hand to hand because technology will be so advanced then.
Olivia James, our guest this evening, a fascinating night of what ifs, possibilities. Many of you believe in the different conspiracies of these shadow government agencies and the programs that they're piloting. Here's a person that has survived and seen their way through it, is trying to share and turn the light on to educate and enlighten us to this. How does it make you feel? Dave at paranormal60.com. I'd love your thoughts, ideas on this. We will visit again with Olivia in the future. And on today's program guide, we do have links to her 2 books. Pick up the books, do deeper research. We're not going to cover everything we need to in this program, but there you might find more answers. And that's it for this week. I hope that you'll join me again next Sunday as we continue the journey into the Paranormal 360. Well, that's it this evening, and I hope you enjoyed the special presentation. After hearing the interview with Olivia, I hope you understand why I wanted to make sure that the interview was heard in its entirety. There was no conspiracy to keep it off of WCCO radio. It was just bad timing with a big rainstorm and bad weather that occurred that Saturday, bumping a Twins game to a doubleheader on Sunday, which then cut right into the time of my show. But I wanted to make sure that Olivia's story was heard and that you could hear it and share it. And for those of you that might not even be aware yet that I do a terrestrial radio show, it is called the Paranormal 360. You can hear it Sunday nights on WCCO radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. All you need to do is ask your smart device to set an alarm for 7 p.m. Central every Sunday to launch WCCO radio. And then you'll be able to listen along. Or you can go to, are you ready? Paranormal60.com. That's paranormal60.com. And at the top of the page, you'll see a little button that says Paranormal 360. Click it. And we'll have episodes there that you can go back to and listen. I know that there are a lot of you that heard the stories tonight and have a lot to wrap your brain around. Doing this for over 18 years, I've spoken to a lot of people, some of whom I have a very hard time believing, and some, like Olivia, who have one of the most outrageous and outlandish sounding stories. But I want you to know something. When she reached out to me, she gave me the blurb about herself, and that was it. And then I said, yes, I would like to have you on WCCO radio. And she agreed to do it. We pre-recorded this. She did not agree to any preconceived questions. She did not send me any questions to ask her. She simply went off of every question that I asked her throughout tonight's program. What really blows my mind is that there is no hesitation in her answers. They are deeply thought out and deeply detailed answers. I think that's really telling towards what we're listening to. And listen, some of it's going to sound completely outlandish if there is a shadow government and an element that's taking place doing these type of experiments on American people, and especially children. The more outlandish you make the program sound, the more insane it is. There is this built-in plausible deniability. How can you believe these ridiculous stories? A train to the moon and a ship to Mars? Okay, sure. Oh, she's got an old soul. She was a djinn. Of course, you're going to hear things that sound strange and bizarre. But what would it sound like if this were all true? It would sound insane and bizarre. And because this is a program of what ifs, this is a program that challenges your paradigm, not to just accept the world at face value for the things that we see, but hopefully it helps you to start to peel back those layers in your mind and allow you to start seeing things in a different light and in a different way. So may the darkness of this world be just a little more bright with the information we share on this show and on the Paranormal 360. And special thanks to Olivia James. I will have her back in the future, and we will go even more in depth because I know there are many more questions that you have for our guest. And if you've come up with some you'd like me to specifically go back after, email them to me, Dave at paranormal60.com. That's Dave at paranormal60.com. That is the best website to reach me and email to reach me. And I will put those in an envelope. And the next time I have Olivia back on the program, we will tackle those questions and more. Thank you so much for being here this evening and allowing me to share this with you. And I hope that your journey on this road just got a little bit more full of wonder and awe. Some of you might have a hard time sleeping after hearing what we just discussed on this program. And to some of you, it may be just the beginning of your own story. So until next week, my friends, stay cool. And remember, you can check me out this Sunday with a brand new episode. Brittany Barbieri is going to join me for part of the episode as we talk about her brand new television program. The premise sounds very familiar, but instead of hunting somebody's old case files of ghosts, they go on the hunt for cryptids. So we'll be discussing that next week on WCCO Sunday night. So make sure you tune in and check that out. And then I'll be back with you next week right here on the program. Thank you very much. Have a great night. And thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide on this journey into the strange and unusual, because it is an honor.